Hey YouTube, it's Matt with Olympus Reptiles, and well, we're gonna film this video and we're gonna put it up right away. We don't usually do that. Today we're going to do that. This is gonna be one of our short little videos, kind of introducing some of our animals. For those of you who haven't been with us for a long time, getting you more familiar with the animals we have beyond just ball pythons. We're gonna do those too. Today is one of those beyonds, and this is a snake that I'm gonna show. It's very near and dear to my heart. Guys, this is one of those things I just never thought I could have, right? Like, before I reveal what it is, you gotta understand, like, there are things, I've always loved animals. Even before I owned this, right? I loved animals. I was a kid who loved going to the zoo, no matter what zoo it is, why we support our local zoo. I was a person who just loved seeing animals, loved seeing displays, loved seeing not just reptiles, big cats, reptiles, rhinos, elephants, giraffes, man, you name it, I am into seeing that. But these are exotic things that I can have based on their size. One thing I never thought I could have is what is in my bucket right now. And then when we found out we had the ability to keep it, we felt like we had reached a level of expertise where we could keep it and keep it safely. I had a chance to get one. I got it all cleared through all the proper channels and jumped over all the hurdles. Man, I jumped at it. I jumped at it right away. Now, for full disclosure, the one you're going to see isn't that one, because if we're going to be honest and truthful, and we want to have that relationship with our viewers of being open and honest, you know, I got to tell you, I lost that first one. So it's crawling around in here somewhere. No, not that kind of lost. Unfortunately, it passed away. Her name was Lilith, and Lilith was a large snake, man, and I actually made a keeping mistake. I know, I'm not immune to it, right? So what had happened was, these are snakes that don't always drink well out of dishes, so you do have to spray them, and you don't want just a light mist, man. You need some water droplets, because they will often drink water droplets off of their skin. But when they get big, these are also not snakes that do a lot of running around in their cage. That snake had a huge cage, man. It had a 6 foot long by, I want to say, over 2 feet deep cage, all to itself. So it had plenty of space, but it had one corner it really liked to get into there and get down in. Well, as we'd moisten the cage and spray it and do all of that, we didn't force it out of there enough. And although the cage would look dry, underneath this big old body, it stayed too moist because she locked that moisture in, which led to an issue with some scales around the cloaca. And by the time you notice something's wrong, it's kind of too late to fix. So we learned from that experience. We did get another one. So you're going to meet Lilith 2.0. Now, Lilith 2.0 is not in that big of a cage because she's not quite that big yet, but she is ready to move out of the current cage she's in and take a step up in size. We'll probably go to a 3 foot by 2 foot is what we're kind of working on that front. And even at that, some of the things we'll have to do differently before I show her to you is other than just, you know, spray it, moisten it, and clean it. We'll have to move her from that spot and make sure and turn that litter up and everything else to make sure that moisture is evenly distributed and she can't just lock it in place, and to make sure she doesn't sit on that moisture. Because when a snake sits in wet too long, it causes problems, and that's what we had happen due to her own fault. So, now that we're past that, it's time to show you Lilith 2.0. Lilith 2.0 is currently in a bucket. In case you guys are wondering, marked danger, venomous reptile. That's because Lilith 2.0 is one of the most dangerous snakes we keep in here by far. Hi, girly. And when I say she's smaller than her predecessor, I do truly mean that, but Lilith 2.0 is already at the size requires 2 hooks. So for these animals, you definitely want 2 hooks. You can also go with the flat hooks. You don't really want to pick up a big one on one hook. Probably still could hurt any bigger than this. We don't want to. We start using 2 hooks with these when they're very, very young, just to get them used to the process. The reason for that is they get so heavy bodied that they can actually injure their ribs with all that weight sitting on there. They also just don't like to have all that weight on one point, where if you have it on 2 points, they tend to hook really nice for you. I know, you're telling me. So there you go. That is Lilith 2.0. So what is she? This is a prime example of a West African Gaboon Viper. She is female, at least as far as we know. That's what we bought her as, or she came to us as. I'm trying to remember exactly how we got her. And I did buy her. We bought her as a female, that is right. And I will share on Patreon my plans with her long term on what I do intend to do with them. So a couple things on these West African Gaboon Vipers is we'll get her to crawl a little bit. I'm not going to put her on the floor because I don't want her underneath some pain in the ass. And you can see how they move. They don't really slither like a snake. They're using that local motion in their ribs to get moving. Kind of like a caterpillar, right? So really kind of a cool animal on that front. Oh, getting my hooks touching there. I don't want that. So anyway, with these girls here, they're going to get much larger than this. We're in no interest in growing her as fast as possible. We just feed her like you would regularly. Want to keep that nice body type. They are a heavy-bodied snake. They actually will use their poo as a ballast. So they're a very, very slow crawling snake, as you can see. This is about her speed. But one thing they are not is a slow striking snake. So don't let that speed fool you at all. These things can strike lightning fast. They can also strike all different directions. Hi, girl. Like right now, I'm not really a happy camper. Give me that back. A very intelligent species as far as snakes go and what they're able to do. You'll see them flick their eye a lot. Some thought is that it may be even caught alluring to bring things close. They are definitely ambush predators. They will sit in one spot and just wait for food to come along, which it often does. You're going to give me a workout. You guys don't usually do that. It's not usually your thing. Now I got a hook free. And I got a hook free. So they're pretty cool snakes to have. But you do need to respect these. One thing I see happen a lot with these snakes is because they're slow moving, they're known to be pretty docile. This tends to be a snake people take a lot of liberties with. I would strongly caution against doing that unless you're willing to suffer the consequences. Their bites are nasty. I mean, nasty, nasty, nasty. You do not want to take a bite from this animal at all. It's not going to be a good time for you. Not going to be a good time for the snake, I promise. So, you know, well, you can pick these up, and people frequently do, and they free handle these a lot. You know, that comes with risk, and I don't recommend it. I recommend if you're going to keep venomous snakes, you have tools. You learn how to use your tools to manipulate and move that snake. These guys aren't too hard. As you can see, if we want to pick it up, we'll use 2 hooks. We're not even picking it up all the way to slide it on the table. Hey, girl, you got to stay on that table. No falling off the table. But we're going to put her back in here in a second because she's getting quite moving. So what we'll do is actually probably just put her right back into her cage for now. So anyway, that is kind of it on the West African Gaboon Viper. While I transport her over to her cage, if she'll let me. And one thing, too, is these things, when you pick them all the way up, they don't weigh too much. I mean, you know, but they're heavy snakes. So when you get that weight all the way up on the end of that hook, it does feel... Oh, don't do that. Come on. That is not what I wanted you to do. You're going to make me put you back in the bucket. Come on. Let's not do that game. That's a much better game. Roar. And I can just let one hook go if I need to for a moment. That's way easier than putting my hand in a bad position, because these things can, like I say, strike and fly up. So here I'm still good and safe because of the height. Take that back. Problem solved. Easy does it. Bink, bink. Put a light on. Now, like I said, somebody's like, oh, that cage is small. You're right, it is. We're in the process of upping her cage size. This is kind of her grow-up cage. So we are doing that. Now, a couple things. If you decide to get yourself a West African Gaboon Viper, A, make sure you can legally do it. B, and if you think you can't, if you live in a city, you probably can't, okay? If you live in town, most places you're screwed. People always ask me, oh, what are the laws in this place? I don't know. I know what I got to deal with. I don't know what you got to deal with. That's your job to find out. But I do recommend keeping them legally. It's always important. And, you know, like, understand if you're starting to ask about those reptile laws, don't just check your state law, okay? There's 3 things that you need to check in most places. State law, number 1. If state law tells you to pack sand, you're toast. Unless most states will have some caveats to that. Like, unless you have this permit, or unless you jump through this hoop, or unless you do that, unless you do this. It's kind of how our state is. You know, there's some things you got to do in order to do this. Number 2 is your county resolutions. If you live in a place that has counties or parishes or whatever your state chooses to call them, check that. Most of the time, that's pretty lax. There's usually not a lot in there on this kind of stuff. And 3 is if you live in a municipality, check your city ordinances. Because any one of those 3 will screw you, okay? For us, I don't live in the corporate limits of any city at all. My address has a city tag on it, but I live well outside of the city limits by miles and miles and miles and miles. So I have to abide by state law and county ordinance, and we do. As a matter of fact, we are licensed to do a whole bunch of stuff because we display animals like this. Pretty cool, huh? Caleb, anything you want to add about the West African Gaboon Viper? Oh, a few things, a few little facts I forgot to point out. Those things possess the longest fangs in the world for a snake at getting over 2 inches. Now, hers aren't that big yet, although I should have had a few sitting out here. If you compare them to a rattlesnake fang, I'll do that on Patreon, you'll see the difference. When we go to Patreon, I'll show you rattlesnake fang, baby rattlesnake fang, that Gaboon Viper's fang, and an adult Gaboon Viper fang. And my God, man, it's a massive, 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 mind-bending difference. Caleb, anything you want to add about these things?
Are there any morphs?
Yes. So I'm going to tell you there's probably more morphs than we know about. No, some snakes don't necessarily need a morph. And Caleb and I are probably going to be different on this. And I'm probably going to get some shit from some people on here, and I get that that's fine. The morph that's out there right now is albino. We have seen albino gaboons. They have hit the public. They are there. They're pretty. A lot of orange, a lot of yellow. Some snakes are prettier without the morph. And for me, the Gaboon Viper, maybe this is nostalgia, man, is one of the prettiest snakes out there. That natural camouflage, how it looks. You got those kind of bluish, purplish grays in there. You've got that cool pattern with the hourglass figures on the back. You've got that head that's that light with the spots right here on the jowls and the split in the middle to look like a leaf. Man, there is very few snakes on this planet that I look at and take my breath away in the same way as a Gaboon Viper does. And you think that thing's sitting in a bunch of leaf litter, and you think you've got one of those that's 4.5 to 5.5 feet long and that big around, and the fact it can disappear where you don't see it. Most of their bites in the wild happen because somebody steps on one. They walk right by him, the one poor bastard steps on it. It's like, hey, that hurts, whack! And that's like, you're fucked, man. Like, that's a bad, bad day. To me, that's prettier than the albino. Not taking anything away from the albinos. I want to say one at Reptile Gardens that recently produced some of those. So shout out to Reptile Gardens on that in South Dakota. Cool place to visit if you've never been. I got to go. It was pretty badass. They had no idea who I was. So no free shit for me. That's okay, though. I'm just kidding.
I just earned a top fan badge from their Facebook page. Does that mean we get a free tour?
Maybe.
I'm a top fan.
And the only reason, really quick, that I say that is, we do go there, and if I'm going to go to somebody else's facility, which we went there a few years back, and I'm going to pull out cameras, I'm going to film, I always ask permission as a matter of respect. I don't ask permission like, hey, so you know who I am? I need some free shit. So I just ask permission like, hey, do you care if we film? This is who we are. I always tell them who we are, if they want to know, so they can see, like, that we're legitimate. We've got actual videos about reptiles up there, so you don't think we're some PETA assholes trying to like sneak in there on the slow down, like, hey, we're reptile keeper lovers, and we're in there and PETA like going, look at it. We're not that ain't us, okay? But they were like, oh, yeah, it looks fine, go for it. They didn't have a clue who we were, and I'm totally cool with that. Sometimes people know us, sometimes they don't, so it works out either way. Anything else you want to add to Caleb?
No, that's all.
That's it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We're going to go film that Patreon and slap these up right now. February, 16th?
Yes.
2023.